not start talking. Oceanfront property, we used to use the oceanfront addendum almost all the time. I don't know if you guys are used to the oceanfront addendum or not, but that's how we represented sea level property before in the past. Now there's a new, there's going to be a new seller real property disclosure that's going to come out on May 1st. However, anything that closes after May 2nd, which means if you have a closing set to close today, that's going to close in May 2nd, it's still covered by the law and it needs to be disclosed. It'll be an additional disclosure. So today or tomorrow, if you have a one that needs to be disclosed, it needs to be disclosed today or tomorrow. Now, there are a lot of brokerages out there that aren't covering this with their brokers. Melanie said she thinks they're going to cover this tomorrow at our general membership meeting in Maui, but I don't know how Oahu and the other islands are. Okay, so if it's not getting covered, let's say you're representing the buyer and the seller's agent doesn't know anything about it, but you do. Do you guys think it would be a good idea to either show them how, send them the link and ask them to do the disclosure, or just do the disclosure yourself? Raise your hand if you think it would be a good idea just to print the thing out and send it yourself.
Why not?
I agree. Until this gets up and running, there's no reason not to disclose, right? Because we have a level of competency in real estate. And even if the listing agent doesn't disclose it, we know it's a state law that it has to be disclosed. And what you're going to see over the course of the next 30 to 60 days is a lot of agents that know nothing about this. Okay, because it hasn't been well announced to any of the brokerages. Okay, so the first thing is I've got this, I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my screen, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got this sea level frequently asked questions. Okay, I'm going to go through a couple key points. If you are in Makawao, do you need to disclose, and Makawao for other island people is upcountry, do you need to disclose sea level rise? No, it's not on the sea level rise. Should you have a flood map? Yes. Okay, and at the end, I'm going to go through all of the regular disclosures, but you do not need to disclose sea level rise. Okay, if the seller's property is residential, so if it's commercial, there's no disclosure. Okay, you need to refer to this map that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to show you how to print it off. You're going to attach it to your seller real property disclosure. I would highly recommend that you have the buyer and the seller put a little signature line or an little initial on this map so that they get it. Now it's going to be multiple pages and it's very large. Okay, you can still send for DocuSign, but once it's DocuSign, you're probably going to have to download it and send and attach it to a drive. Okay, because it is a very large thing. They have not optimized the site and the images on the site are very large. Okay, if you lie in a special flood hazard area, okay, which is pretty much everything along the ocean, they recommend you do a sea level disclosure on top of the flood hazard area. Now, we do a flood map in our tribe, no matter what, no matter where you are, because you could be next to a river and have a flood in a floodplain that the river always overflows. So you should always have the flood map no matter what. Okay. The sea level rise map, okay, is a requirement from the seller. Now, here's in a practical perspective, this is what will happen if it's not disclosed. And you're going to see there's going to be a lot of non-disclosures over the next 30, 60 days. The buyer has the right to sue the seller for non-disclosure. Remember, guys, the number one reason why people get sued in real estate is for disclosure. They didn't tell somebody something. Okay, it's not for fraud, it's for disclosure. So with sea level rise, what's going to happen is somebody's going to have, maybe it's like Royal Kahana over here in Maui, where they lost their entire beach all the way up to the pool. Okay, so let's say something happens to one of the condo buildings. There's a big storm and it takes all the sand out and there's some foundational issues. And now there's a special assessment. And the lawyer says, well, didn't you get your sea level rise certificate? And let's say it closed May 15th. And they say no. And what's going to happen is they're going to then sue the seller. And then the seller's going to say, well, I didn't know I had to provide it. And then the seller's going to sue you because you are the real estate professional that's supposed to stay up on the law and on things that are happening and requirements, et cetera. This is a state law, not a county law, state law. Okay, so that's kind of what happens. So you don't want to be in that situation. And remember that beyond the idea of getting sued, your goal as the seller's representative is to represent them to the fullest of the ability. You have a duty of loyalty to them, okay? And you also have a duty of disclosure. All right? It's part of your code of ethics, remember. Okay, so when must it be disclosed? Okay. Offers before May 1st, 2022, but who intend to close their sale on or after their date, if your property is in a sea level rise exposure area, they strongly consider disclosing that information to the buyer right now. So anything closing, and we've been talking about this for 6 weeks. So anything closing on May 2nd, which is a closing day, because Sunday is May 1st, needs to have this disclosure done. And I know I'm not showing you the graphic yet, but I want you guys to know you need to disclose on any properties that have a possible sea level rise. Can you disclose on an upcountry property a sea level rise? Sure. What will happen is you'll just be in the clear. You can over disclose. I always recommend over disclosing. Okay, but you don't have to, but you have to do it. Now, they say they strongly recommend, which means you better do it or you could face a potential lawsuit. Okay, lawsuits are bad. Even if you don't want even the hint of a lawsuit, guys, because it costs money for attorneys. It costs your time that would take you away from your business. You don't want to have to deal with it. The lawsuits are terrible. Okay, so over disclose completely. Okay, they're recommending that any sellers that have a deadline of Friday, April 29th, which is in 2 days, to provide that disclosure. Honestly, guys, you need to do it today if you have something closing in May. And if you have something closing May 2nd, you have to do it today because they have it's an additional disclosure. They have the right to cancel escrow. And if it's your buyer, they have the right to cancel escrow. Now, I don't want to freak everybody out at the same time because the reality is when I'm going to show you these maps are conjecture. There is no guarantee that there will be sea level rise. There's no guarantee there won't, but there's also no guarantee that it's going to be 3.2 feet, which is what they're having us do. And your buyer's first question is going to be, when is it going to rise 3.2 feet? And our answer is, we don't know. We don't know if that will ever actually happen. Now we are seeing impacts of sea level rise. We just don't know how much and we don't know by when. And neither do they. So we are disclosing a hypothesis. Okay. And the buyers need to be clear on that. We don't want to freak them out, but at the same time, we have to cover our own butts and disclose because it's a state law. Any questions on that? Sorry, guys, my throat is getting a little dry. Any questions on when you have to disclose? Let me see if there's any.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm in the middle of my escrow right now. So since you said it in closing after May 2nd, can I just go ahead and give my listing agent a call and say, hey, I'm not sure if you know about the seller, know about this sea level rise thing, but I need you to look into it immediately and see if this condominium in Pearl City is on the sea level rise map and talk to your seller about that.
Yeah,
So
I would.
Okay.
And I would send them, I'm going to put this link in the chat.
Yeah.
So you have it. And then I'm also going to post this video on YouTube. You can send in my video too.
Okay, because this is my first escrow. I just want to make sure that we do this correct and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, you need to disclose, and it doesn't hurt to disclose even if it's not, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Sorry, guys, my throat is killing me. Sometimes I talk too much. So let me throw this in the chat box. Everybody, grab this down. Okay, so that's in the chat box for you. If you have questions on this, there's a couple videos out there. I think I have another video here. I'll post this in the chat box too. And then I'm going to go over exactly what you have to do, and I'm going to help you guys through it, because it's not intuitive, guys. It's not the first time you do it. You're like, why would I do that? But that's how you do it. Okay, so you need to know how to do it. So in Maui, we always teach people to include your flood map, the copy of the permits, the copy of the tax records, and we have a huge packet that we provide, and we assist our sellers with their disclosure, right? Because the seller doesn't know that they're in an SMA. So we print off a zoning certificate, we give that to the seller, and we reference where it comes from, of course. And we got the permits pulled and everything. Everything's provided for the seller so they know, and if the listing agent doesn't, we provide it for our buyers so that we do our buyers' due diligence, right? It's the buyer's responsibility for due diligence. So yeah, I would recommend anybody that go through, if you're anywhere near the coast, make sure that you get this published. So the website is, what was it? I'm going to post it in the chat. I think it's Hawaii Sea Level Rise Viewer. Okay, but it's just a forwarding domain that forwards to here. So if you type in Hawaii Sea Level Rise Viewer, because of course they decided to make the shortest domain in history, it forwards you to this. This is the sea level rise map. All right. Everybody pull up Hawaii Sea Level Rise Viewer.com on your computers and bookmark it, because you're never going to remember it. And it'll forward to you this longer domain. Hawaii Sea Level Rise Viewer. Give you 1 minute to do it in your preferred browser. Now, if you're in Maui, and you're probably the same way on the other islands, right? You can see Sea Level Rise Viewer right from our MLS. It's a resource. Okay, so if you forget it, it's on the MLS. It's got a link to it from the MLS. All right, so here's Hawaii Sea Level Rise Viewer. Now, they are requiring that you disclose a 3.2 foot sea level rise. Can everybody see my screen with the map? Okay, so when you go into this, it's not defaulted. You have to check the box, 3.2 feet. All right, the next thing you have to do is you come over here and you're going to type in either the TMK or the property address. Okay, does anybody have something in that now here's the other thing. They don't have the maps done for every single island. Okay, so that's the other thing, is if you don't disclose now and later on they put you in a sea level rise area, you could have a potential conflict there. You have to prove that it in the previous map, which is a real-time map, that it wasn't previously in the sea level rise. So I recommend anything, I don't know, within 3 miles of the ocean, put it in the viewer. So I'll do this address, 145 North Kihei, Hawaii. Okay, so then your viewer pops up. Okay, and you can click either zoom here or you can zoom in here. Okay, and you just keep zooming in. Okay, guys, until you get big enough. So this is where my office is, but oops, the condo right next to our office is where it's completely underwater. So I'll be beachfront office, but no condos to sell there. Okay, so I've zoomed in, it's got the picture. Okay, and then what you're going to do, okay, you can share this to Facebook or Twitter. You could share it to somebody's email. So you could email it to yourself there. But the best thing to do, because remember, guys, you need to have a copy that you disclose this, okay, is just to print it to a PDF or save it as a PDF. All right, so this is the way that you disclose the sea level rise. Hang on, it's still coming up.
Do you think that all pages are necessary to share? I mean, wouldn't we?
You're supposed to. So all the pages down below, hang on, it's loading. All the pages down below, you're supposed to disclose. If it loads. Because down below it tells charts, and I'll scroll down below for you guys in just a second. Okay, so now I can save it as a PDF. So hopefully you have a decent processing computer. And I would just save it to your desktop or your download folder and then deal with it later, okay? You can, guys, and it might behoove of you to take the PDF and optimize it. That way you can email it out easier. So here you go. Here's the sea level map. And there's the disclaimer that they don't really know when it's going to happen. Overview of what sea level is and coastal erosion. So 3.2, it could be that in 100 years, we have 0.2 feet of sea level rise up to 3.2. Okay, so if you have an on the edge buyer, here's the thing, they don't know. It could be 0.2 feet of sea level rise or 0.2 meters. Why is that meters? Why does it say M? That really should say feet. Okay.
Well, it's the mean.
Oh, it's the mean. Yeah, it's the mean. Okay.
They're
But
just
there's,
flipping it.
yeah, so it could go up to 3 feet. It could be half a foot. Right? We just don't know. And they really don't know. So this is just, we have to disclose. It's just like there could be a volcanic eruption on the Big Island, right? And these numbers, they're just going up. They just don't know. And in fact, if you watch the video, they just say they just go up. We just don't really know when it's going to happen, but we still need to disclose it. So all of these charts help kind of explain the diagram above. So if you just send this and somebody's in the blue, right, underwater, they're going to be like, oh no, I'm never going to buy there. I'm going to be underwater in a year. And that's not true. Unless all the ice caps melt overnight and they drop a nuke in North Pole, that's not going to happen. Okay, so this is just for your clients. Okay, any questions on the disclosure part of the sea level rise? So you're going to save it as a PDF, attach it in DocuSign. There are PDF converters. I think Adobe has one. You can compress a large PDF down and get it from like a 25 meg file to like a 4 meg file, which makes it much easier. So this one is a 19 meg file. You cannot email a 19 meg file. Now you could have shared a link. You could put it in Dropbox, okay? But you can't email this file to your clients. It doesn't work. All right, these images are too big and they don't have multiple PDFs. So you can optimize the PDF and convert it. You can send it via DocuSign. DocuSign will allow you to, because DocuSign is a link, so they sign off on it, but then it won't send them the PDF after like a DocuSign normally does, because it's too large of a file. You're still going to have to either zip it, stick it on some type of drive. Remember, guys, you need to keep these drives for 3 years. All your records, I recommend more than 3 years, but 3 years minimum. Any of your documentation, 3 years. Okay, so you can put it on.
Send them a link?
You can send them a link from your Google Drive or from Dropbox.
I mean, to the page, so that you don't have to send the files.
No,
just send them
because
to the address.
here's the thing. See the URL up here, there's no code. So if I open that URL, it's going to be a blank page.
And it could be changed, and then
And it could be changed. And they did say that the maps are changing. It might be less, it might be more. I mean, a year from now, they may say, oh, we're thinking it's going to be 20 feet sea level rise, right? And you don't want to get sued because now they're saying 20 feet sea level rise. Or they could say it's a half a foot sea level rise. Who knows? But you don't want to get sued because you didn't disclose. Disclose, disclose, disclose. All right. This doesn't matter what island you're on. It doesn't matter. You're going to have to disclose this. Any questions? Okay, so you're going to save it as a PDF. You're going to send it out for e-signature. You're going to have them sign. Now, there is no signature line on this. Okay, so when I open up my PDF, I'm just going to drop in at the very top an initial or a signature. I recommend a signature on this one because this is a pretty significant rule change. Okay, now we are getting new form. We get new forms in May and I think either September, October. the May form is going to have a disclosure on that as well, but that does not take away from this disclosure. You still have to do the sea level rise disclosure with the map. So your clients are going to ask you about the sea level rise disclosure on when they get it. There's going to be new language. I haven't seen it. I believe we're going to look at it on Friday. So if you need to make sure they fill out that portion correctly, and they're not going to know, guys. I don't know any sellers that know if they're in a sea level rise area. So you need to send a copy of this to your seller before they fill out the disclosure. Now, if you're like us, we always do the disclosure when we take the listing. Okay, I highly recommend you get in that habit now, so there's no surprises later. Because the reality is when you send this disclosure out to some people, you're going to lose some escrows. Fact of the matter is you will. There will be some people that panic. Okay, and your seller's going to say, well, why didn't you tell me about that before? Now I just lost an escrow. So you need to do this up front. This on the listing side, you need to do this up front. Give them the sea level disclosure and explain it to them. And that way they can accurately fill out their disclosure. Okay, just like the flood map and everything else. Now, the next 30 minutes, I wanted to get this done in 30 minutes. So the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you how to properly disclose everything. But this, I wanted to cover for the people that are off island. Okay, any questions on that? Any questions from the people off island?
Should they be signing every page?
No,
Okay.
because the reality is you got a timestamp here, and when you scroll down, it says page 1 of 17. Okay, and when you get a I mean, you could, if you want to, I think it's a little overkill. Because when you get your zip form document, it's always going to have that DigiSign code. If you're manually doing it, yes. But if you're DigiSign doing it, you don't need to. And every brokerage needs to know this. And honestly, guys, I think you guys are going to be at the forefront of educating the people on the opposite side of the transactions, because I don't know of any other brokerages that are teaching this. So just be aware of that if you don't get it, you should request it. You can provide it, but I think you should make the listing side, if you're on the buy side, provide it. Okay, it really is the seller's responsibility, and the listing side needs to educate themselves. It's like if you dress your 4-year-old forever, by the time he turns 10, you'll still be dressing him, right? So we need to educate the other brokerages, and they need to step up as well. Yolanda.
Yeah, I had a question. I had a buyer who was interested. We had gone into escrow for a waterfront property, and we requested from the sellers for a sea level certificate or any information on that. And they told us that they didn't have any certificate and that they didn't have any information. So we basically, my client, obviously, she wanted to feel, she's like, I want to know, I want to make sure that my property is not gonna the water's not gonna come and basically take over the property. But
Yeah.
I just found it strange that as a seller's agent, how do you not have any information on that?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so it was an elevation certificate probably is what you were asking for, right? Not a sea level?
Both, we were asking for both, actually. So I don't know if is that part of a mandatory thing now, or?
So an elevation certificate is a survey. Okay, it's an additional survey. Now in Maui, if you have an oceanfront property and you think that now they don't provide them on condos. If it's a condo, they wanted to provide it, but if it's a single family home, people do ask for elevation certificates. So that's on our oceanfront addendum in Hawaii to ask for an elevation certificate. Now the sea level rise disclosure is something new, but the elevation certificate for sure, they could have asked for it and asked for them to provide it. But just, it's 60 to 90 days for us to get those elevation certificates. It's an extra expense to the seller. Some will provide it, some won't. And just so you guys know, it's on the oceanfront addendum. I'm pulling it up right now for you guys. Some will provide it, some won't. You have the right to request it. Okay. They should know whether they're, and now how long ago was that, Yolanda?
So we fell out of escrow because my client didn't feel comfortable. But this was, I want to say maybe like a month ago. And yeah, this is a single family waterfront.
Yeah, so
property.
single family waterfront. So this is the oceanfront addendum. You guys should still be using this on condos here too. You just don't request the ocean, the elevation certificate, which is down here typically on condos. The condo associations will not provide it. You just need to make sure that, you know, you're gonna be able to allow for extra time. I don't know how long it takes for an elevation certificate over on Oahu. Every island is different. I mean, it takes 30 days to get a survey here, just a regular survey. So, and that's if you push it. So it depends on your island. I would reach out if I were you, Yolanda, to just talk to a surveyor, ask them how long it takes them to issue a elevation certificate, since you're gonna have this buyer probably buy something else. And then
Mhm.
you can inform the listing agent, hey, this surveyor over here says they can get us an elevation certificate in such and such time, okay? Now, the elevation certificate, a lot of insurance companies will require that, okay? Especially if it's built after 1970, let me,
Yeah, and that was the thing too. I had said to her, you know, being that she's gonna have to get insurance, they were probably going to request that as well. But it just surprised me that she, you know, it thanks to, you know, our broker, and Jennifer was the one who sent me the link, and she's like, here, you can find more information. But
mhm.
if it wasn't for her, like, I'm just surprised that the listing agents, because if you're saying that this disclosure is mandatory, I'm surprised that she wasn't sending us any type of disclosure on the sea level.
Well, see, here's the thing is most of the agents don't know about it, right? So I mean, it's been mentioned here and there, but nobody's had a huge push. And to me, this is a red flag for a lawsuit. This could like totally bankrupt agents, because I think that non-disclosure of a state required form, I don't know if E&O will protect you, right? I don't know if you'll be covered by E&O if you did not disclose at all. So I think this is so crucial that agents make sure they cover their tush, if you will, their bum, because if you don't, you have, I mean, anybody can sue you. And an oceanfront home's probably 10, $20 million. That is big pockets for a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, that one I was telling you about, there, it's a $32 million home and they lost their seawall. They cannot occupy the home at all. Okay, the seawall's gone. Now, if the seawall was built a year and a half ago, probably bad construction, they're gonna put a new one back. But let's say they had lost the house.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, let's say the listing agent didn't disclose that there's erosion. Now, everybody knows, or everybody should know, the water can take sand away. That's just reality. But as things rise, you need to disclose that. So I would say, yes, your person should definitely have disclosed, but until May 1st, until a close was your close going to happen after May 1st?
It was gonna happen. Yeah, it was.
Here's the other thing, guys. Remember, additional disclosure. So let's say Yolanda's close happened May 5th. And the agent got a clue, or Yolanda disclosed and said, hey, you didn't disclose this. This is an additional disclosure. You need to send over the additional disclosure. Most contracts are written that you guys have the right to cancel, your buyers do, with an additional disclosure. And this is a pretty significant additional disclosure. Not that I want anybody to lose deals, but I also don't want you to lose your livelihood or your house because you got sued, right? So this is a significant disclosure. I'm not very happy with the way that the legislature rolled this out, and they didn't really push for more education on this. Like it should have been in Core B, is it even out yet? Core B should be announced, and this should have already been done. Because everybody needs to know this, okay? Because this is a lawsuit waiting to happen. And it's a big lawsuit, not a oops, the window doesn't open, we have to replace a window, or oops, they took the chandelier, okay? This is a big disclosure because it's a foundational disclosure, okay? So I would say, you know, I'm sorry they didn't. They should have, but I can't fix other brokerages. I can only do what I can to help our own. Okay, and then we'll educate as much as we can other brokerages to try to help bring up the whole profession, but it really should have had more disclosure. Incompetence is not an excuse in a court for realtors. when you're professional. That's not an excuse.
Close to where I live.
And other brokerages need to know better. Okay. All right. Any questions on the sea level rise disclosure and what you have to do as far as making sure that you get proper disclosure? So you're going to have two ways of disclosing: on the disclosure form and this map. This map, you're going to probably have to either do a PDF converter to decrease the size because they did not optimize the site. Okay. Hopefully they're going to have some frustrated agents, I guarantee you, that don't know how to use a converter or don't know how to zip files. Okay. And you can put it in a zip file. So if you know how to do zips, you guys should know how to do either. If you Google PDF decrease size, Adobe has a large compressor, small PDF, all of these things will shrink it down to like 25% of the size. Okay. So you can convert it and then you can attach it to DocuSign, get that signature, save it away. It's probably going to be in our SkySlope as a required document, or maybe it might be optional because the upcountry places and in the mountains don't have it. But if you have an ocean front, it should be required. So, and here's the thing, guys, if you have an oceanfront anything, you should be using the oceanfront addendum. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people send contracts over without an oceanfront addendum when we had oceanfront listings. And it's on them to represent their buyer with their addendum, but they really should have. Okay. All right. So we're going to disclose that. So that's your map you're going to include on your disclosure. They're going to fill out the seller of property disclosure. So that wraps up the sea level rise training. Now I'm going to go over additional disclosures that everybody should be doing when they do disclosures. So now whether it's required by law or not, but the best way to handle disclosures is to have your disclosure done. You can go get your listing, give them the seller real property disclosure, have them fill that out while you're arranging photos. Okay. When you show up for pictures, they should have it done. Okay. You want to get that disclosure done before you actually put in the listing. In fact, I put my disclosures as an associated doc in the listing. So I don't waste the time of, some people say 5 days to get seller real property disclosure. No, I give seller real property disclosure with the purchase contract. So nobody's backing out for me for seller real property disclosure. And I only allow 10 days for review so that nobody backs out after inspection because of seller real property disclosure. Keep it tight for your sellers, guys. So you're going to go take the listing, and there's the nice thing about they actually got it together now where you can pretty much pull all the stuff you want about any property right from the resource page on our website. I hope that the Big Island and Oahu and Kauai are the same. I just don't know. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull the tax records. Now, yes, our office requires it. Okay. But you should be doing it anyway. And they require it as an attachment, but guys, you should be attaching this with your disclosure, and you should already have it printed out for your seller. Sorry, that's the name. My old eyes can't see sometimes. All right, so I'm just going to pull up a unit. So what I would do here is I would just print this. Okay, this is the print button up here, and save it as a PDF. This is my listing presentation, guys. I take this with me on the listing. Yes, I have my CNA, but I do this too because I get the listing most of the time. Because why? I come across as extremely competent. And I'm sorry, yes, you could be a fast talker, but competence will kick butt of those fast talkers every single time. You're going to show them their tax records. Okay. You're going to show them, hey, so this is your property tax. Make sure their name, you're going to check to see if it's in a trust or a corporation. This one's in a trust. You want to get the trust, you might as well get the trust documents there. You're going to put in escrow soon anyway. Okay, you can get copies of trust documents. Make sure you bring them back because a lot of times people don't have electronic copies. Okay, and then you've got improvements. So we see one building and you say, oh, wait, I see that you guys have two buildings here, but this says there's only one structure. Did you do it without a permit? Okay, and they'll say, yes, we did. And you're going to know that because you're also going to bring to that listing presentation the Kiva is gone. They pulled Kiva. Kiva used to be here. I'll have to pull Kiva up. They
It's
just,
on a different system now.
it is on a different system. They haven't redone the link. So Kiva is, I don't even know if I can get to it. They just changed it 2 days ago. We go into Kiva and we pull up the permits. I know I got the email like 2 days ago. Anyway, we pull up every single permit and we'll save them as a PDF. Okay, and we'll include that. I take it to my listing appointments, guys. And I can't tell you 9 times out of 10, yeah, the Kiva's down. I have to go to the new Kiva system. I'll pull it up in a minute. 9 times out of 10, they've never seen that they have open permits. Okay. In Maui County, if you have open permits that have had their final inspection, most of the time, if you call them up, they will close it because there's a ton of people that have open permits. They had their final inspection and the county forgot to close the permit. Okay. And that's a simple way. Now, if they have a non-conforming, okay, if they have a non-conforming illegal Ohana they built, and they have a bunch of open permits on their main house, and they call the county and saying, can you close this permit? The county says, no, we'll have to come out and do an inspection. I would not advise my clients to do that inspection. Because what will happen is you'll open up a huge can of worms. You'll have some after the fact permits. You're just going to have to disclose to the buyer, unless the seller wants to do all the after the fact permits, but most sellers don't. You'll have to disclose completely to the buyer that that entire Ohana is not permitted. Okay? Or they put in a septic tank that wasn't permitted. But it has to be disclosed. Does that make sense? The problem with Maui County, as soon as that gets open, they might be stuck with that property for another 5 years trying to get it permitted. And most sellers won't want to do it. Okay. So, but you do need to disclose that you've got unpermitted stuff. Okay. We also pull up the zoning. So our old Kiva system, which I'm going to have to learn the new Kiva system, you could actually pull up the zone. Was it residential 1, residential 2, ag zone? Is it in an SMA, also known as a special management area? All that stuff was on our old Kiva system. And there used to have a link to Kiva from here too. It looks like they took it down. Oh, automated planning. This is the new Kiva system. Okay. So we've got a new automated planning permit. This is supposed to streamline. We can actually apply for our permits online now. This is the new system. I'm going to put this for the Maui people in the chat too, since nobody's actually used it, and I will review it and then I'll give you some training on it too. Okay. So this is the new Kiva system. All right. So you're going to pull in the zoning. You're going to pull if it's a special management area. We also have what's called a request for service. Oahu has something similar. I just don't know what it's called. And that's any comments of neighbors, complaints, like if there was a drug bust and somebody complained, hey, county, there's a bunch of drugs coming out of this house, or hey, county, why is my neighbor chopped down my tree, or whatever. People can make complaints. It's not a police system, but it's a complaint system that people can make. So RFS, I pulled those up as well. And then we're going to pull the sea level water rise. So that's part of your disclosure. Okay, then the next thing is your flood map. So I already went through sea level rise, so I'm not going to do that right now. But then I'm going to do your flood map. Now, this is a Hawaii state flood map as well. Okay, so anybody in the state of Hawaii can pull this up. The way you pull the flood map in order to get the report is you do this. And a lot of agents don't do this. This is another way just to cover your bumpkin. All right, so here's my report. This is in a red zone, okay? So the flood map actually shows that my office will be underwater if it ever floods once I'm beachfront property. So I'm going to click on it and it pops up this little thing that says report. Click here to print report. So you're going to click to print report. You're going to name it the name of the property. Okay, 145 North Key, and I'm going to do a report name. And I'm going to download the report. Now I show up with all this stuff at the listing presentation, and other people show up by themselves with maybe a PowerPoint. Okay. And I walk through them and I teach them about their house, right, guys? A lot of people may not know they're in a floodplain. Several people, I mean, I can tell you over and over again, people don't know they have open permits. Even if they bought the house 2 or 3 years ago, their last buyer seller's agent never informed them. Okay, and that's not good, because it could be a problem going forward when they go to sell it, because most everybody now, a good buyer's agent, if you get a crappy one, then maybe not, but a good buyer's agent will do what I'm doing if it's not provided. And that could kill your sale. You might as well know up front so you can see if you can fix it. All right, so 145 North Key Hay. So this is the flood map. All right, so I got my flood map. I've got my sea level rise. I've got my tax records. I've got my permits. Okay, and now every single permit, guys, I'm gonna have the seller initial off on too. I have my seller real property disclosure electronically, so they can go and boom, 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 initial on every single page of every permit, initial the tax records, initial the flood map, initial the zoning, and they've received it all. Okay, I show it to them and I give it to them, but then I make it electronic and then just drop initials on the top of every page. And I've got it in a template, so it's super easy. Okay, so now we've got sea level rise flood map. You've provided the tax documents, and then they can use all this documentation, guys, when they're filling out their seller real property disclosure. Because most people don't know if they're in an MSMA. Most people don't know if they're in a flood zone. Okay, most people don't know any of that. So now you're assisting your seller, okay, and giving them information that they can use when they're actually filling out their seller real property disclosure. Now, the training class told us that we needed to advise our sellers and assist them on filling out the seller real property disclosure, which we're not allowed to do. It says at the very top, it must be filled out by the seller. So my take on that is a person that's not in real estate doesn't understand that. But if you give them the sea level rise viewer up front, they will know how to fill out their seller real property disclosure. So in 15 minutes, guys, I just showed you how to not get sued and save you guys a lot of money. That's all it took. And I went through all of them, right? Yeah. So in 15 minutes, and typically, guys, it may sound like a lot of work. In fact, like pulling up the permits is probably the most work, because you have to click on each one, save it as a PDF. All right, so each one you would actually be saving off. So then you just compile them all and put them together. If you're not face to face with your client, you can definitely send them out DocuSign. Okay, but remember, if you disclose like this and you over disclose like this, you're going to protect yourself, you're going to protect your seller, and you're going to be honest to the other side. And if you're representing the buyer, you're protecting your buyer. And that's our job as agents, guys. It's not for us to make money. We have to keep our seller, when we take on an agency relationship, we work for them, not for us. Doesn't matter anything about commission. We represent them to our best ability, and you got to take that seriously. All right, any questions on disclosure?
I'm actually curious what program, when you said you put the disclosure so they can just initial it all and you save that template, what program did you use for that? Did you
Yeah,
drop?
I'll just show you. So I have a DocuSign set up. If you're doing more than one transaction a month, get DocuSign. If you're doing less than one transaction a month, you can be fine with DigiSign. In DigiSign, though, you can't set up the template electronically. I guess you could, it'd just be a whole heck of a lot of work. So with DocuSign, I can copy whole sections and reuse them. With DigiSign, you got to drop every single field. And that to me is too much time. It still took me about an hour and a half to set up my original template in DocuSign. In DigiSign, it probably would have taken me 6 hours and I would have just given up. Hang on, I just got a new computer, so I'm trying to learn. You grab the navigation. So in DocuSign, you can set up templates. I don't know if you guys have done this before. If you're doing any type of large volume, you really should have templates. So I have templates set up for, say, seller signatures, right? Because when a contract comes in, you have to drop this initial at the bottom of every page for the seller to sign. I have a template for that. So you can set up templates in DocuSign. Okay, so I have a few. I have quite a few templates. I have a seller real property disclosure if it's an individual. I have a seller real property disclosure if it's a double. Now I'm going to have to redo it because why? Because we have new seller real property disclosures. So when I go in it, and I'll go to edit. So this is a single. As soon as the new seller real property disclosure comes up, I'm gonna have to edit, move some fields around is all. Because they will have moved some fields. Every time they change a contract, you have to move the fields. Now, if you have DocuSign and you're linked to zip forms, it's gonna pull most of your fields through, but it won't if it's a PDF, right? So this has got like the full name, zoning, text, all these fields you have to physically drop. Now down here, I've got every radio button for all these different things. Now, the nice thing is you can copy whole sections.
Oh, wow.
And move them.
And the seller's disclosure through DocuSign and have them fill it out that way?
Yeah. Right, so I can move whole sections, I can copy these. I'm not gonna save this, guys, so it doesn't matter.
Wow.
But I can move, I'd let go of the section. You can move whole sections anyway. So like I could highlight this, move this over here. Oh. Getting used to my new computer, there we go.
Do you have them type in the section G?
Yeah, so down here I have a big old text box. Now you want to make
Oh.
sure you're not making them required fields unless they're required fields. But yeah, they can type anything in here and it wraps around.
Oh, that makes it so much easier to read.
Yeah.
How do you make it not required? Is there a different setting that I'm?
Yeah, so check boxes are always not required,
Okay.
because they could be yes or no. And then text fields, right? So if you click on the text field, over here it says whether it's read only or a required field.
Hmm.
Okay, so that should help out a lot. That's one good template you should have. And again, this is all going to change. And I wish I could share this with you guys, but I can't. It doesn't let me share the templates. Otherwise, I'd send you my templates. So I have a team agreement. I have seller side purchase contract. So when I get a purchase contract and I'm representing the seller, I don't want to have to go through, drop the initials at the bottom. But they always leave off my information. I've got that all template based, right? So you don't have to drop all that stuff in, because once you get to doing a lot of contracts, you do 5 or 6 deals a month, it gets a little cumbersome to waste your time. Besides, guys, why are you wasting your time? Right? I put this together in under 5 minutes. So I've got the initials. I've got a seller side purchase contract with one seller and one with 2. And so then it drops all the initials and dates in at the bottom. Right? And then the other thing is I think I have the T section too dropped in here, so I don't forget to check that pesky T box, right? That pesky T box, people always forget that, to say
you
whether
can
it's an
move
acceptance or a counter, huh?
You can just move that in the template, right? Can you just move it?
Well, if I'm getting a purchase contract 9 times out of 10, I'm a
Oh,
pretty tough counter. So, most of the times I counter, but yeah, you could, when it comes, it's not in the template you would want to move it. It's when you start a new transaction that you would want to move it, right?
you
So what
could, yeah, you could move it when you
could
do the
move it when you're,
transaction. the
before you
boxes
send
are-
out the DocuSign, yeah. So all
Okay.
you do, guys, is with the template is you start now. Okay, and you're gonna upload your form. I'll just upload any form. Flood map report. If it's a purchase contract, it's actually gonna recognize it because it does actually do some recognition of the actual contract. So it will actually say, would you like to apply this template? Sorry, I didn't know I was going to do a DocuSign class today, guys. So down here, you can say apply template, right? So I could go in and I could go through my templates and I'll say single real property disclosure single. And I apply that template and then all the fields are dropped in and I can move the fields wherever I want.
That's
Okay.
awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Cool. That's great.
And this is recorded, guys. If you need to play this back, I know I talk really fast. Feel free to, I'll put it up on YouTube so people that aren't in our tribe can still see it too. If you want to share it with your teams, please do. Please share, because we don't want our brokerage to be in a financial situation where we get sued either. And the problem is you're not going to know about it, right? You're not going to get sued tomorrow, but you could get sued 3 years from now for something you forgot to do today. Okay, so let's just make sure that we don't forget and we protect our people, because we have a responsibility to. Okay, any questions on any of the disclosures? I zoomed through that pretty quick. Any questions at all? Anybody? I have no problems letting you go 5 minutes early or 4 minutes early.
No questions, but this is Jen. Thank you, Maria,
Jen,
for
how you
doing
doing?
this. Good. This is so amazing. I would welcome you and invite you to do this at one of our state meetings when you have a chance.
Or I
would-
can
yeah.
just upload it to the state
Workplace,
group. Yeah.
yeah. We find that not everybody, unfortunately, does go to workplace chat. So everything that we post in workplace chat is also in the newsletters that gets
Okay.
emailed to everyone.
That's fine.
But if you would like to do this at a separate meeting in the world or at one of the state meetings, this is great. We appreciate you being a broker, being one of our managing brokers for Maui, and sharing your knowledge and training everyone. So thank you so much for this, Maria.
No problem. I'm glad I can help. I want to make sure we're the most knowledgeable people out there. And honestly, after talking to some brokers this week, nobody even knew what I was talking about because I had
Yeah.
multiple showings and nobody had an idea. And I just showed oceanfront property and they didn't disclose anything.
Wow. Yeah. It is going to be one of these things where, and I do have some background on the ledge side, but this took about 4 years before it even got to this point. What the ledge originally wanted was the seller to have to look up this information, and us as the realtors would have been liable by law. And that was
Yeah.
taken out, but it is messy, and we're going to see the repercussions of this as we get through the next few years.
Yeah, I feel this is as significant as a lead-based paint disclosure.
Yeah,
And I have a
absolutely.
feeling there's going to be some lots of lawsuits. There's tons of lawsuits with lead-based paint. There's been lawsuits with radon. And it's just going to be one of the, and this is going to be actually more significant in Hawaii because we have so much oceanfront property. And people think, oh, I have a condo, I don't have to do this. No, you still do. And I do have faith that, humanity will actually come up with a solution to a lot of these oceanfront properties. But until we do, we still need to disclose.
Yes, yeah, it's a bit spooky. We've got here on Oahu, I know there are properties out in Maui and other islands too that are where water is coming on shore. But here on Oahu on the north side, the road is falling in. The actual road has fallen in the multiple areas. So now they're looking at it from a bigger picture of telling everybody you need to move inland. All these homes need to be moved inland and relocated because the road cannot be shored up at this point. It's just being stabilized.
Yep.
So it's spooky. Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
important.
from an investor perspective, you might want to buy stuff in the blue, right, guys? So
Mhm. Yeah,
'cause
get away from the
eventually
red.
you'll have the nice beachfront property once all the so I want to look at it that way. So yeah. All right, well, that's great. So just always protect yourself and let me know if you have questions. And Jennifer is a wonderful resource too. Reach out to her if you have specific questions. And if you ever hear somebody say, should I talk to a lawyer? The first thing you do is say, you always have the right to talk to a lawyer. And the second thing you do is you call Jennifer. So whenever you hear lawsuit, you call Jennifer. All right.
Oh, so funny. Thank you, Maria.
That's what I do. I say, if somebody's talking lawsuit, you better call Jennifer. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful day and so let's
Yeah, I have a
property this
question.
week. Yes.
Absolutely. So is it possible that you can send the link over to me? Because like I'm gonna call my listing agent at Engel Vogels right now, explain what's going on, and she might ask me some questions. I'm not sure if I'll be able to.
Yeah. I did you
it
get the
thoroughly.
chat?
Yeah.
See all these links in the chat? You want me to send all these to you again?
Well, the link to this meeting in general, because like.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to upload it to YouTube and I'll send it to you right now.
Okay, cool. And I have also like I think I have like a few friends that like they're probably living at near an oceanside property right now. So like, what's the best if they're already owning the place right now? What's the best thing we can tell them in terms of this? Like, should we tell them, hey, by the way, there's disclosure coming out?
Well,
You
it's
should
not
be
going to
aware.
impact them till they sell, right? So
Yeah.
when they go to sell, it might affect property values, guys, a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
And the county's not wanting to invest a lot in oceanfront. They're doing what Jennifer said. Maui County's not anyway. They're doing what Jennifer said and telling everybody move inland because we're not going to shore up because it's a lot of money, guys, to shore up these oceanfront things. Eventually, the vacation rentals are just going to be all in the ocean. So I would say give them a copy of the link, have them look up their own address so they're informed. But there's nothing you can do without county permit to shore up your oceanfront property. You have to get a permit for that. That's a big no-no to do anything on the ocean without a county permit. So if they're having a problem, then they should address it. If they're not, they should just be aware that there may be a problem in the future. And I say may, because things change, right? So climates change. So it could be we go through an ice age and it's no longer an issue. But as of right now, we are currently in the current moment disclosing.
Do you recommend, so I have a client, I just closed on an oceanfront property. And I know that they may want to sell again in the near future, and he has another oceanfront property. Do you think I should, as someone that may list with me in the near future, do you think that I should bring this to their attention?
Yeah, you have to tell the sellers. It's the seller's responsibility to disclose. It's not the seller's agent, but we
No,
are
I
an
mean-
offshoot of the seller. So yeah, they have to know if they're going to sell.
I mean, we haven't like listed yet or anything. Do you think that it would be better to just wait until we talk about that? Or like, do you think it would be a talking point or a touch point that I should bring up?
Here's the problem is you're going to have sellers that are like, why am I having to disclose this? This is hurting my property value. And you're going to have buyers that say, oh my gosh, the property is going to be underwater next year. And neither one of them are 100% accurate. Yes, there will be scared buyers that are afraid to buy oceanfront property, but there's a lot of buyers that have to have oceanfront property. Barack Obama just brought oceanfront property, guys. If everybody thought all the oceanfront property was going to fall in the ocean, people that have a lot of money wouldn't be buying oceanfront property. Okay. Right. So people are still buying oceanfront property out there. However, you do have to disclose that sometime in the next 100 years, it may be underwater. Hopefully I'm not around when it is. That was a joke. But it's now law, right? So I don't know if I would personally send this link to somebody that's getting ready to list. I would take it in and explain it. And if I'm doing a Zoom call, I would explain it. And I would say from a seller's perspective, it's a required law. We just have to disclose that there may be some ocean level rise and a worst case scenario, guys. The worst case scenario is the 3.2 foot sea level rise. It's not the best case scenario. This is the absolute worst case scenario. If you want to run through on the sea level map with them and say, oh, it could just be half a foot. There it is. There's the best case scenario. Actually, best case scenario is it doesn't rise at all. But even at a half a foot, at Sugar Beach, guys, the front of that closer condo, I don't know if you can see this, is in water. Okay. But that could be 100 years from now. So the question is, are they okay? It's kind of like leaseholds. Guys, think about it this way. It's kind of like leaseholds. People still buy leaseholds, even though they're not going to have any value in them at all in 20 years. And they still buy leaseholds, right? Somebody's going to look at this and say, hey, in 50 years, the condo might be underwater, but I'll probably have already traded out of it by then. But what will happen is all this oceanfront property is going to depreciate in value like a leasehold does. You guys know that, right? Leaseholds, the closer it gets to the expiration of the lease, it should become worth less and less because you have less years available in that property. Now, the inflation impacts it, and a drive up in fee simple properties does bring the leaseholds up, but the sooner it gets closer to the expiration of the lease, the less it's worth. It's going to be like this. The higher that sea level gets, the less the property is going to be worth. Now, we're smart people, and we've got a lot of smart people in this world that are going to work their magic and try to find solutions. There's a good solution out of Australia where they put these concrete pylons, right? All around, they'd have to do it all around the entire island. Okay. And it slows the waves down. Okay. Because part of the sea level rise is it keeps taking the sand out, right? And there's less and less sand. So then the sea level's coming up because there's less and less sand. The sand goes into the ocean. That slows the waves down, so that decreases erosion. Will they do something like that? I don't know. There's environmental impact to that. There's coral reef impact to that. But there's things that can be done that may happen. Or we might go through an ice age because of something. Who knows? There's always things going on. There could be a major volcano erupt that could block out the sun and cause an ice age. But I'm not going to disclose that because that's more far-fetched. But this property is now going to be depreciated in value because the front of it's going to be condemned. And you know what happens when it gets condemned? You can't stay in it anymore. And yes, if you go down to McKenna, let me shrink this up. All those multi-10, $20 million homes, right? And you can do this for all your islands, guys, too. They're also going to have some problems. This is Halama Street. I'm sorry. Halama, this is all that oceanfront $10 million homes there. Thought this was farther. Okay, here we go. For some reason, this map doesn't show a lot of McKenna underwater, which it really should be. It may just be that they haven't finished the map off yet, which they said they haven't. Okay, but when that happens, all those multi-million dollar, $20 million homes could be underwater. Okay. Any questions on this? I know I keep asking for questions, but this is something you really got to understand and protect yourself, because this is the largest chance of liability we've had in my career. This is even worse than lead-based paint, right? Because lead-based paint, everybody knew for older buildings and before 78. This is every single oceanfront, and we are going to be impacted by this a lot. Don't get sued on this one ever. Okay? Because this is career changing. Okay. All right, guys. And again, don't scare your people. Don't scare the buyers either. Let the buyers know that this is a possibility. They just have to be aware of it. And will it impact sales on the ocean? Yes. It is definitely going to impact the number of buyers that buy oceanfront property. How much? I don't know. But I'm not going to say it doesn't. And I know that they understood that, or at least they should have understood that when they created the legislation, right? And people should be aware that they could lose their house. We got to be honest, right? People could lose their house. People could lose a condo. Maalaea is pretty much all underwater. All the condos in Maalaea are gone. I mean, Maalaea's got all those sewer problems, but all these condos here in Maalaea, it's gone. Oh. That entire area is gone, and that's all short-term rental and long-term rental. Okay. But again, you might want to buy right behind it. You're a smart investor. Buy that vacant land. All right, guys. You guys have a wonderful week. So lots of property. I look forward to hearing about all your successes, and I will talk to you later. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.